commandments of men. Mark 7, verse 7. Now, did you know that the first individual on record to accuse the Pope of being the office of Antichrist was a Pope? It's true. Pope Gregory the Great lived from 540 to 604, who became the last of four original doctors of the church, who became known as St. Gregory. At the end of the ancient church period, he said that such a church teaching came from the spirit of Antichrist. Here's his quote: "I confidently affirm that whoever calls himself the universal bishop or desires to be so called is in his pride a forerunner of Antichrist." Well, they ended up calling the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, the supreme bishop, and he said, you shouldn't do that. That's Antichrist. Antichrist means a teaching that is against the teachings of Christ. It does not mean a person is a half-breed devil human. Some people have got this Rosemary's Baby idea in their head that the word Antichrist means that somehow the devil or demons had intimate relations with the human and the baby is the Antichrist. Part fallen angel, part human. That's fairy tales. Antichrist means the teachings or the office that they hold or the institution is against the teachings of Christ. And I tried to illustrate that. All of the great reformers, Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, Huss, people like great preachers like Spurgeon, Dwight Moody, and I could go on, they all believed that the beast of Revelation 12, 13, 17 was the Catholic Church, and the Pope held the office of Antichrist. Now that's only the first beast in Revelation 13. I don't know if I'm going to have time to tell you about the second beast, but that was the refresher right there. That was a quick refresher. Now, with that in mind, oh, by the way, let me give you a couple of quotes here. Here's a quote from Martin Luther. "We here are of the conviction that the papacy is the seat of the true and real Antichrist. Personally, I declare I owe the Pope no other obedience than I owe to Antichrist." That's from his sermon on August 18, 1520. Zwingli said, "I know that in its works might and power the devil, that is of Antichrist." Speaking of the Catholic Church. In Calvin, in his Institutes, he did not even use the word Pope. Wherever Calvin used the word Pope, you know what he said? Antichrist. Calvin had been a Catholic priest. And the thing that stands out this week that's unusual is not that we had a new Pope. Popes come and popes go, right? Time moves on. But a lot of unprecedented things happen. Not only was it the first Pope from the Americas, and that's significant. First Pope from the Western Hemisphere. Shows a shift in where the power is. He also is the first Pope who is named Francis. And the main thing I think you should sit up and pay attention to is this is the first Jesuit Pope. Now, when you say the word Jesuit, different things pop into people's minds. First of all, the Jesuits never established themselves as the Order of Jesuits. That was a name that sort of stuck later and they embraced it. It's like Mormons did not call themselves Mormons. They called themselves Latter-day Saints. But everyone else called them Mormons because of the Book of Mormon, and it's a name they finally acknowledged. Well, that's sort of what happened with the title Jesuits. These were people, it was a special order within the Catholic Church that was established by Ignatius of Loyola in 1540, and they were to be a militia within the Catholic Church that were specially trained, that took special vows to defend the church. Now, the church at that time, people were leaving by thousands, hundreds of thousands, and joining the Protestant Reformation. And so they established this, and some of the vows that they took to be part of the Jesuit society were pretty serious and even a little bit sinister. You won't hear much about that today because everything has been toned down in the rhetoric between Protestants and Catholics. But to my knowledge, they haven't changed the vow, and the allegiance and the purpose is still the same. Let me read a couple of I've got a matter of fact, if you want to see it for yourself, you can just go online and you'll find some websites that will, they've reprinted this. It's something that they don't publish. It's been kind of ferreted or spirited out from some of these secret meetings. It's long. I'm not going to read it all to you. There are different levels in the Jesuit order, and this is a vow taken at the final level. A lot of dear, lovely people that are very innocent and unassuming are teaching in Jesuit schools. They're very big on education. Part of the reason was for that was they established their institutions to become, when you control the education, you control the thinking, don't you? Amen. America was established as a Protestant country, and they realized that in order for us to forward the church's agenda in this country, we need to be teaching their children. We must be very patient. We need to be far-sighted in what our plans are. The candidate would kneel before the superiors on a red cross, clutching a black crucifix with a dagger in the other hand. It was a blood vow they'd finally seal by signing with their own blood. And they'd make a number of promises. The superior would say, "You've been taught that it's your duty as a spy to gather all statistics, facts, and information in your power from every source to ingratiate yourself into the confidence of the family, circle of Protestants and heretics of every class and character, as well as the merchant, the banker, the lawyer, among the schools and universities, in parliaments and legislatures, and judiciaries and councils of state, and to be all things to all men for the Pope's sake, whose servants we are unto death." In other words, part of what their purpose was as a militia, isn't it a military's job to kind of infiltrate and gather intelligence? And through subversion to spread information? "My son, therefore you have been taught to act as a dissembler. Among the Roman Catholics, be a Catholic." And he goes on and says, "And among the Protestants, be a Protestant." This is part of the vow. "I do now denounce and disown any allegiance as due to any heretical king, prince, or state named Protestant or liberal, or obedience to any of their laws, magistrates, or offers. The name of Protestant be damnable, and they themselves be damned, if they will not forsake the same." Again, this is long, and I'm not going to read it. As a matter of fact, there's some of it that is actually pretty disturbing. I won't read to you because I don't know if it would be appropriate in church. "I do further promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents itself, make and wage relentless war secretly and openly against all heretics, Protestants, and so forth. That I will provide myself with arms and ammunition that I might be in readiness when the word is passed that I am commanded to defend the church, either as an individual or with the militia of the Pope." And then the superior would finally declare, Go ye then into all the world, take possession of all lands in the name of the Pope. He who will not accept him as the vicar of Jesus Christ and as vice-regent on earth, let him be accursed and exterminated." It's pretty strong language. I mean, I don't remember Jesus saying, "Go teach all nations, and those that don't go along with you, exterminate." So it's a very militant branch of the Catholic Church. As a matter of fact, for years, the Catholic Church itself would not entertain or support the Jesuits because they were considered to be a fanatical fringe because of these vows. But that's changed, obviously. That's why I think it's extremely significant that we know that the first Jesuit Pope has been chosen. We must assume that in the early ages of his life, he took these vows and felt this way. And if you think I'm making all this up, let me read something to you from the book Great Controversy, a great book I recommend. Amen. This is from page 234. "The first triumphs of the Reformation past, Rome summoned new forces, hoping to accomplish its destruction. At this time, the order of the Jesuits was created, the most cruel, unscrupulous, and powerful of the champions of popery. Cut off from earthly ties and human interests, dead to the claims of natural affection, reason, and conscience, wholly silenced, they knew no rule, no tie, but that of their order, and no duty but to extend its power." Matter of fact, I think I have another quote in here. Yeah, here it is. This is from Great Controversy, page 235. "Under various disguises, the Jesuits worked their way into offices of state, climbing up to be counselors of kings and shaping the policy of nations. They became servants to act as spies upon their masters. They established colleges for the sons of princes and nobles, and schools for the common people, and the children of Protestant parents were drawn into an observance of popish rites. All the outward pomp and display of the Romish worship was brought to bear to confuse the minds and dazzle and captivate the imagination, and thus the liberty for which the fathers had toiled and bled was betrayed by the sons. The Jesuits rapidly spread themselves all over Europe and the Americas. Wherever they went, there followed a revival of popery. There are other quotes. I'm just giving you a couple of samples of that. So just understand, as nice as this person might be, what is a Jesuit? New pope, new name. You'll be hearing that he picked the name Francis because of St. Francis of Assisi, but actually others are saying that. That's an assumption that they're making. It's probably more likely he took the name Francis in the name of St. Francis Xavier, one of the founders of the Jesuits. Catholicism in the New World. This is just a little trivia I thought I'd put in here to give you an idea of how things have changed. I read that when Columbus first landed in the Western Hemisphere in 1492, scholars now estimate, at first they thought there was just a few people here, but when they look at the ruins of the civilizations that they see, there may have been as many as 60 million indigenous people living in the Americas. None of them were Catholic at that time. One of the first things the Europeans did is they sent one thing I'll say about the Jesuits, they were willing to die for what they believed in. A lot of Jesuit missionaries died. A lot of them were tortured by the natives in different countries. But they were committed to make Catholics wherever they go. And now, approximately started out 60 million people, none of them Catholics. Now 568 million Catholics live in North and South America. The largest religious group in that territory. That's a pretty remarkable expansion. Things have changed since that time. One more thing, even in America things are changing, if you haven't noticed. I think I've mentioned this. I mentioned this once before, but I want to put it back up on the screen again. One of the most important things a president does is he picks Supreme Court justices. And that is probably the most lasting thing he does, because what the Supreme Court does really defines who we are as a people. Oh, we need to pray because our Supreme Court's going to be talking about gay marriage soon. And I tell you, it's going to be a tight call. No one knows exactly how this is going to play out. If you had the right judges in there, we wouldn't be wringing our hands right now, but things have changed. Did you know, if you go back well, first of all, when America was founded and the Supreme Court was established, every single Supreme Court justice was a Protestant. Now, you might think, well, that's not fair. That's because people wanted to pick judges that would protect the Protestant principles of freedom of religion and liberty. But look what's happened in the past 50 years or so. Green would represent Protestant, red would represent Catholic, and blue is Hebrew or Jewish. Things have radically changed, and now, since the retirement of John Paul Stevens in 2010, there are no longer any Protestants, 0, on the Supreme Court. The majority of the Supreme Court is now Catholic, and here you have their religious affiliation that they freely advertise. But can you see it's radically changed? What I'm concerned about is what I'm going to call Protestant amnesia. I started out telling you that it's possible for us to forget our history, and you realize nobody is saved by understanding the things that I'm telling you today. But I think it's important we don't forget our history. We don't forget what's happening politically in the country. Let me read a quote to you from the book Great Controversy, page 564. Romanism is now regarded by Protestants with far greater favor than in former years. If that was true when she wrote it, I wonder what she'd think today. In those countries where Catholicism is not in the ascendancy and the papists are taking a conciliatory course in order to gain influence, well, they're just about now in the ascendancy here. Do you know right now there are slightly more Protestants in North America than Catholics, but that's quickly changing.